Hi students, welcome back to yet another lecture series. We are discussing hemoglobin. All right, we have been discussing the structure of hemoglobin, how the structure affects the cooperative binding of hemoglobin. We discussed the interaction of oxygen with hemoglobin and how hemoglobin changes its form from T form, taut form to relaxed form, vice versa, depending on the oxygen load. All right, so we will continue this discussion. So why we are discussing this? We are discussing because of the NMC competency 5.2, which gives hemoglobin as a specific example when we need to discuss about structure and function relationship of protein. All right, so after we are done with competency number 5.2, we will move on to the normal and abnormal variants of hemoglobin, which we will be covering in the other competencies, right? So as usual, our standard drill will be recapitulating few previous concept. पहले दिन जो पढ़ाए थे कुछ वो knowledge हम लोग आज recap करेंगे. The reason I am going slow is this is an important chapter that you will be needing for your entire medical curriculum, and we have got a lot of time. To be honest, there are so many biochemistry classes. If we go up as per the standard speed, we'll be covering everything in 1 month. I don't want that to overburden you, so I am going very slow. This chapter has already been, I think, taught in physiology as well, so it will be easier for you to relate, right? So, right away, hemoglobin being a tetrameric allosteric protein, it facilitates the cooperative binding mechanism of oxygen, and it enhances the efficacy of hemoglobin as an oxygen transporter just due to the tetrameric structure. Okay, we know when in the lungs the partial pressure of oxygen is very high, okay, then hemoglobin rapidly binds with oxygen, and when the partial pressure is low, that is 40 millimeter of mercury at the tissue level, hemoglobin rapidly liberates oxygen. Okay, so what are the factors, what are the allosteric factors that affect this loading and unloading of oxygen at lungs and the tissues? Okay, so these are the factors. Okay, partial pressure of oxygen, partial pressure of carbon dioxide, okay, the proton concentration, that is the pH. The pH is nothing but the negative log of hydrogen ion concentration. The concentration or the amount of 2,3-bisphosphoglycerate, 2,3-BPG. And apart from that, the glucose concentration as well as the metabolic condition, everything is regulating this whole thing, this how much oxygen will be binding, how much the tissues, how much oxygen will be liberated at the tissues, everything is controlled by these 5 or 6 factors. So we will be discussing each and every one of them in detail. Okay, I think you must be knowing most of them, but still I will be going very slow to recap it, recap or to teach you each and every factor. So maybe we can cover all of these factors today, or maybe we'll be covering something in this session and we'll be covering the next in the next session. Okay, so regarding PO2, mind it, there's a difference between the PO2, okay, and I mean the unit in which partial pressure can be represented. Okay, it can be represented in millimeter of mercury, or whenever we are actually concentrating the physiology, I mean in our system, okay, we are not putting exactly, we are not measuring with a barometer, okay, we measure with something else. So generally it is represented as 100 to 120 mm of Hg per torr. Okay, this is actually the concentration. Okay, the concentration of partial pressure. Okay, so basically oxygen is measured in partial pressure. Okay, we are not measuring the exact volume. Okay, then we need to take out the lung and squeeze all the air, which is not possible. Yes, we can indirectly measure the dead space volume, tidal volume, all that. However, the oxygen concentration, whenever we are measuring oxygen concentration with respect to the partial pressure, always remember the numerator is the partial pressure and the denominator is torr. Okay, so we know at lungs it is 100. Okay, at lungs it is 100 millimeter of mercury, that is the PO2, and the concentration at the lung is 100 to 120 millimeter of mercury per torr. Okay, so this favors oxygenation. Okay, and we already know OR, that is the mnemonic, small mnemonic, that is whenever there is oxygenation, the T form converts to R form. The T is the deoxyhemoglobin form and the R is the oxyhemoglobin form, right? So what happens when the concentration of oxygen is low? So at the tissues, the partial pressure of oxygen was 40 millimeter of mercury, and the concentration of oxygen is 35 to 40 millimeter of mercury per torr. Okay, so this favors deoxygenation. Basically, the reverse thing is happening. Unloading of oxygen is happening. Oxygen is being lost from hemoglobin and it is being delivered to the tissues. Okay, and R form changes to taut form. The relaxed form changes to the taut form. Okay, so this was about oxygen. This we have read in detail in the previous classes. Oxygen is the main thing that we need to know because oxyhemoglobin is the major headache in our system. So next we will focus our discussion on to the role of partial pressure of carbon dioxide and the proton concentration or the pH value. Okay, so just note this at tissues. Okay, you already know this. So if you don't know, please note at the tissues due to active metabolism. Okay, so oxygen is being used up always. So we see that the concentration of oxygen is low. However, the partial pressure and the concentration of carbon dioxide, that is PCO2, is much higher at the tissue level compared to lungs. Okay, and so also the proton concentration. So H plus is more and PCO2 is more. Naturally, if PCO2 is more, PCO2 will be dissolved. I mean, carbon dioxide will be dissolving in water to give H plus and bicarbonate, and that leads to more H plus. So basically, that leads to lowering of pH. So at the tissue level, high PCO2, low pH. This we know. Now, what does it do? This increased PCO2 and low pH at the tissues, okay, they help in unloading of oxygen. Okay, they favor oxyhemoglobin to lose affinity for oxygen. That helps in unloading or offloading of oxygen. That helps the R form change to T form. Now, what is Bohr effect? Basically, this is Bohr effect. Okay, Bohr effect describes the relation of hemoglobin and PO2 and pH. So just now what we read, that is it was discovered by Christian Bohr, okay, 1904. He was a physiologist from Denmark. So the Bohr effect states, okay, it's a physiological phenomena, means it's a normal thing. Okay, hemoglobin's oxygen binding, that is the binding capacity of oxygen and hemoglobin affinity, is inversely related, ulti disha mein related hai, is inversely related for both acidity and concentration of carbon dioxide. Means if there is more acidity, if there is more PCO2, okay, more acidity means more proton and less pH. So both of them are inversely related to hemoglobin's oxygen binding capacity. So if these are more, acidity more, carbon dioxide more, hemoglobin oxygen binding will be very less. Okay, that is what we just read. Okay, the factors that are helping in unloading of oxygen, that is explained by Bohr effect. So the effect of PCO2 and pH on oxyhemoglobin is known as Bohr effect, and it is inversely related. So what does Bohr effect do? I'll explain it very soon, and most of you already can apply your brain and deduce the Bohr effect on your own. So Bohr effect facilitates release of oxygen and unloading of oxygen. Okay, since tissues are rich in carbon dioxide and pH is lower compared to arterial blood. Arterial blood means the blood that is carried from oxygen to the tissues. Okay, that has got rich quantity of oxyhemoglobin. Oxygen is tightly bound to hemoglobin, but at the tissues we need them to unload and deliver it to the tissues. So basically, this is a manifestation of acid-base equilibrium of hemoglobin. I already told you hemoglobin can remain in this form or HHB or a proton bound form. Okay, so this is actually what is happening. Now you see this reaction we know from our acid base classes: carbon dioxide plus water, carbonic anhydrase, carbonic acid, again carbonic anhydrase facilitates breakdown of H plus and HCO3 minus, right? So this states that basically when we mix carbon dioxide and water, it leads to production of protons. Okay, that is known thing. We already know how carbon dioxide in water can produce acid. Okay, now these protons actually are taken up by hemoglobin. Okay, after oxygen is released at the tissues. So hemoglobin will give out oxygen and will take up hydrogen. And these protons are transported again by hemoglobin and are released at the lungs, and at the lungs the reverse changes happens and CO2 will be expelled by exhalation. Okay, please don't think that oxygen is negatively charged, okay, and hydrogen is positively charged. So how can something give out oxygen and take up proton? No, there is no electrical phenomena involved in here. Okay, hemoglobin has always affinity for H plus, and the oxygen that is binding is not via ionic bond. It is the thing that binding of oxygen sterically hinders acceptance of H plus. So whenever basically oxygen is lost, I mean it is the reverse way. Whenever protons are being pumped in, or whenever hemoglobin finds an H plus, it says, okay, oxygen, I don't need you. I have much stronger bond to form now. That is ionic bond between Hb minus and H plus. You get my point? So whenever there is excess of protons, that is at the tissues, okay, hemoglobin prefers to bind with the protons. hemoglobin बोला कि भैया H plus के साथ ही हैंडशेक करेंगे, ऑक्सीजन अभी नहीं चाहिए, तो ऑक्सीजन को वो छोड़ देता है. ओके, वो ऑक्सीजन को छोड़ के वो पूरा प्रोटॉन भर के जाता है इन लंग्स. However, in the lungs, there is too much oxygen, there is very less proton. Okay, so since it's an equilibrium, whenever there is a high reactant in one side, it should always go to the product side. So hemoglobin now converts with oxygen to form oxyhemoglobin, and that actually leads to the loss of proton. So वो proton अब वो lung में दे देगा. Why? क्यों lung में देगा? Because lungs also need proton. Now in the lungs there is bicarbonate ion, which is a much stronger acceptor of proton. So वो क्या बोला हीमोग्लोबिन के, भैया तुम ऑक्सीजन को लो, ये वाला प्रोटॉन हमको दो, प्रोटॉन के साथ बनेगा कार्बोनिक एसिड एंड वो लंग से निकल जाएगा. सो दिस इज हाउ इट हैपन्स. सो बेसिकली आई कैन ड्रॉ अ स्मॉल फिगर. यू कैन ऑल्सो ड्रॉ हीमोग्लोबिन, ऑक्सीहीमोग्लोबिन था. ओके, व्हेनेवर देयर इज प्रोटॉन इन द टिश्यू, क्या होगा, ये ऑक्सीहीमोग्लोबिन से ऑक्सीजन विल बी गॉन एंड इट विल फॉर्म HHB. ओके, सो व्हेन इट रीचेज द लंग्स में क्या होगा, बाइकार्बोनेट आयन इज देयर. ओके, इट विल फॉर्म, ये हीमोग्लोबिन से H प्लस ले लेगा, इट विल फॉर्म H प्लस बन के CO2 बन जाएगा जस्ट इन दिस रिएक्शन, एंड नाउ ऑक्सीजन इज टू मच इन द लंग्स, सो दिस हीमोग्लोबिन विल कंबाइन विथ ऑक्सीजन टू फॉर्म HbO2 or oxyhemoglobin. So basically this is what is happening, and this is the Bohr effect. Normal physiology है Bohr effect. So basically what I just told, these are the two main things. Binding of protons to hemoglobin diminishes binding of oxygen. Okay, अगर प्रोटॉन बाउंड हो गया हीमोग्लोबिन में तो ऑक्सीजन बाइंडिंग नहीं होगा, सो ऑक्सीजन विल बी लॉस्ट एट द टिश्यू लेवल. ओके, एंड reverse is happening at the lungs. Binding of oxygen to hemoglobin diminishes proton binding to the hemoglobin. This is happening at the tissues, okay, and this is happening at the lungs. Okay, so as the proton concentration increase, okay, I'm saying too much, okay na, yahi mera bad habit hai, so I have too many bad habits and this is one of them. Affinity of hemoglobin to oxygen is reduced. Same thing again, देख लो, if you have missed, focus at acidic pH, more H plus ion concentration favors unloading of oxygen from oxyhemoglobin, and at alkaline pH, okay, that is less H plus ion, it favors loading of oxygen to deoxyhemoglobin. Now deoxyhemoglobin will be converted to oxyhemoglobin, so T will become R जब लोडिंग हो रहा है, R will become T when unloading हो रहा है. If you have not clear concept about this T and R form, please visit my previous video. Okay, I will provide the link in the description. That is very essential. Fine. Okay, so again same thing, but I am saying the same thing over and over again ताकि एकदम दिमाग में पूरा imprint हो जाए. It should be imprinted in your mind. So at lungs, okay, basically I'm saying the same thing, now it is in a reverse fashion. Okay, if you have understood the previous thing, you will understand this. At lungs there is low PCO2 and low protein. Okay, it will favor oxygenation, okay, or loading of hemoglobin by oxygen. Deoxyhemoglobin transports proton from tissues to the lungs. Okay, this is actually the reverse of Bohr effect. So what Bohr effect says? Bohr effect says whenever there is more hydrogen, it will lead to loss of oxygen. And this effect says deoxyhemoglobin will transport proton. This is actually Haldane effect. So you will find both of these effect in your textbook. May be asked in Viva. If you are having confusion in understanding, you can write in the comment or inform me in the WhatsApp group. I will again explain Haldane effect also, but it's very easy. And what happens? On oxygenation of deoxyhemoglobin, the protons are liberated at the lungs. These protons will combine with bicarbonate to form carbon dioxide and it will be expelled. So this was about oxygen, CO2 and H+. Okay. So now we move on to the effect of 2,3-BPG on loading and unloading of oxygen by hemoglobin. So 2,3-BPG we all know is an intermediate of glycolysis. Okay, it is formed by a shuttle, not in the original glycolytic pathway. In original glycolytic pathway, 1,3 is formed, 2,3 is formed by RLS or Rappaport-Lubering cycle. Okay. You know, in mature erythrocyte there is no mitochondria. Okay, there is no nucleus even. So only thing that is happening is glycolysis. So there is a very important role between glycolysis, very important role of glycolysis and oxygen carrying capacity, and this is the connecting factor. Okay, 2,3-BPG formed in Rappaport-Lubering shunt during glycolysis helps in unloading of oxygen. So this is the structure of 2,3-BPG. Okay, very easy to remember, but you don't need to remember. Then these are all three-dimensional structure, difficult to remember, so even forget that I showed you. Okay, what is important is 2,3-BPG is impermeable to RBC membrane, right? So it cannot go out. So what happens when there is excess glucose metabolism? That is, whenever there is excess glucose needs to be metabolized, converted to pyruvate, energy production, etc. Then there is an increased concentration of 2,3-BPG. Naturally, more glycolysis, more Rappaport-Lubering shunt, more 2,3-BPG. So what will happen? What will happen? You already know. Let us see what this slide is saying. So where does 2,3-BPG bind? This we already know from our diagram of T form and R form of hemoglobin. We have seen in the deoxygenated form. Okay, there is a gap in the center. When the hemoglobin is fully oxygenated, there is a gap in the center, and then 2,3-BPG can enter in the gap. It will drive out all the oxygen. Okay, so it is in the central cavity of hemoglobin molecule. Okay, again so much. Okay, so negative charges interact. So where does it actually bind? This is only for MCQ purpose. Okay, no examiner during Viva theory exam will be asking you, please tell me the exact amino acid where 2,3-BPG is binding. It is a high level MCQ. If you are appearing for any competitive exam or PG exam, then it will definitely be required, but for undergraduate not so much. So second lysine is the second position, and fourth histidine, as well as there are 2 nitrogen of the pyrrole ring of globin. So 2 N-termini of globin chain. With all these things, 2,3-BPG is binding. Simply ignore being a first year student. When you grow up, if you remember me, you can again look at this slide, or you can just take this note. Just write this line. Negative charges interact with second lysine, fourth histidine, and 2 N-termini. Termini is a plural of terminus. 1 N-terminal would be 1 N-terminal, 2 N-termini of globin. Alright. So at low PO2, whenever the partial pressure of oxygen is low at the tissue level, 2,3-BPG has high affinity for adult hemoglobin. So basically inversely related. Affinity is high when PO2 is low. So what will happen? Naturally, at increased 2,3-BPG level, that is at the tissue level, whenever there is more glucose metabolism, etc., it will favor unloading of oxygen. So remember, we are now going past the oxygen tension. Okay, yes, it is true that at low PO2, 2,3-BPG has high affinity for adult hemoglobin. But even if the concentration of oxygen is moderately low or it is average, if there is excess amount of 2,3-BPG, it will lead to loss of oxygen from hemoglobin. Reverse will happen if there is decreased 2,3-BPG level, it will favor oxygenation of hemoglobin. So, high level of 2,3-BPG is inversely related to oxygen affinity of hemoglobin. So, it is in the T form or the TOT form of hemoglobin, that is 2,3-BPG is centrally located, and this actually lowers the oxygen affinity. We all know deoxyhemoglobin is the T form, and in the deoxyhemoglobin it has got the least affinity for oxygen, right? So, as the partial pressure of oxygen increases, now when we are moving from T form to R form, when we are moving from tissues to the lungs, oxygen will come in and it needs to push out the 2,3-BPG. So, during loading of oxygen, this 2,3-BPG will be extruded out and the hemoglobin resumes to its original state. Remember, the original state at which hemoglobin is tension free, it is the relaxed form. Whenever something bends, then it becomes taut form, salt bridges are formed. So, bending creates a lot of tension. Taut form is an unnatural form. So, hemoglobin always prefers to be oxygenated. This is the very important concept. Hemoglobin always prefers to be oxygenated. Hemoglobin always prefers to return back to its original form, that is R form, where it has got high affinity for oxygen. 2,3-BPG is just like a foreign body, remember, like that. Whenever it is entering a taut form, we are also pushing inside some foreign body, and no, it is not good to have a foreign body inside you, okay? So, inside anything. So, it is important that oxygen also tries to favor the same thing, and it always tries to go back to its original R form, and it tries to kick out the 2,3-BPG. So, R form has high affinity for oxygen, okay? So, let us recap again a few things. So, what happens when the condition of 2,3-BPG is high? So, during condition of cellular deprivation of oxygen, okay, very important, mind it, whenever cellular deprivation of oxygen is happening, meaning in anaerobic condition, cells cannot produce energy via electron transport chain or TCA cycle, all those things. So, glycolysis is the main source of energy, right? So, more and more glycolysis, it will lead to more and more production of 2,3-BPG. What will it do? It will tell oxyhemoglobin that fine, please give out all of your oxygen. So, the hypoxic condition, so the condition where the tissues are getting deprived of oxygen will be taken care of. बहुत important है, समझो इसको. So, we are discussing that tissues में oxygen नहीं है, okay? So, whenever there is no oxygen, mainly glycolysis is the source of energy. So, tissues करेगा क्या? Glycolysis production करेगा, RBC. That will do what? वो 2,3-BPG ज़्यादा production होगा. So, 2,3-BPG will be produced more and more. 2,3-BPG will tell oxyhemoglobin, fine, now I am there, you please take me, मुझे ले लो, and oxygen को दे दो. So, oxygen will be given out. Oxygen will be given out to what? To the deprived tissues. So, basically it acts as a cycle. So, oxygen low, more 2,3-BPG, 2,3-BPG high, again oxygen is delivered to the tissue from oxyhemoglobin, right? So, what are the condition, okay, where there will be high level of 2,3-BPG? So, what are the normal physiological states in which 2,3-BPG is increased to compensate the such condition of hypoxia? Number one, कोई भी hypoxia due to any reason, कोई मुंह ऐसे तकिए से बंद कर दिया है, definitely for a moment 2,3-BPG will be very much increased, and these are the things that are found in postmortem. Okay, so how does anyone simply know? Yes, apart from the injury, soft tissue injury that happens whenever you smother, that is known as smothering, SMOTHERING. Basically this, you are trying to, nobody, suppose a homicide, a murder is performed using a pillow or something by which the upper outlet of respiratory tract is shut down, even by a piece of polythene. Okay, I am giving homicidal ideas while teaching hemoglobin. I have gone too far, but remember, all of them will lead to this thing. Body will try to momentarily, so oxygen supply of the brain is getting cut off. So all these things start to happen. Glycolysis, 2,3-EPG. So everything. So at hypoxia, of course, that it is not so fast. Okay, but when it is much slow, the effect is more pronounced. Okay. So during hypoxia at high altitude, severe anemia, lung disease, cardiac disease, anoxia, blood loss, so anything, whenever oxygen carrying capacity of the blood is either reduced or the oxygen is itself reduced, there will be increased 2,3-ppg in blood. Even in COVID patients, okay, the saturation is falling. So all of them, if you just simply measure the concentration of 2,3-ppg in blood, it will be very, very, very high. Okay. So in high altitude, definitely 2,3-ppg level increases and it plays a role in adaptation to hypoxia. So 2,3-ppg will increase, so more and more oxygen will be delivered to the tissues. Normally, suppose, I will just show you hemoglobin is partially filled with oxygen. I mean 50% it is filled with oxygen at a partial pressure of 70 mm of Hg. So what does it mean? If the oxygen concentration is 70 mm per torr, or if the partial pressure of oxygen is 70 millimeter of Hg, what hemoglobin will do? Hemoglobin will hold 50% of oxygen and it will only give 50% to the tissues, right? However, who can change this affinity? 2,3-ppg. So suppose at high altitude, let me just quickly change to my pen. At high altitude, what will happen? Suppose the oxygen, normal oxygen concentration, you are doing a trekking, you have gone to the top of, say Kanchenjunga for example, extremely high altitude. I am not telling Mount Everest because that is a very tough job to do. You know, what is the most difficult or the most inaccessible highest peak of the world? Okay, it is, if you know it's very good, it is K2. Okay. Currently, definitely, it's in Karakoram range. It was originally located in India, but of course, now after the partition, it is located in Pakistan. So, for any Indian trekker, basically K2 base camp access to bhul hi jao. Okay, and even the geography is so harsh. Okay, most of the deaths during trekking have occurred during K2 summit hunting. So, even abroad, I mean, foreign trekkers also don't dare to trek K2. I'm discussing so many anap things, okay, but it helps. So in high altitude, suppose the normal oxygen is only 50 millimeter of Hg. So if hemoglobin continues to hold oxygen more than 50%, then tissues will be hypoxic. So what happens? Now 2,3-ppg increases. It changes the overall affinity of oxygen for hemoglobin. So now there will be so much 2,3-ppg. What I told you, 2,3-ppg will decrease the affinity of oxygen, increase 2,3-ppg, decrease affinity. So when 2,3-ppg levels increase, now the body will adapt in such a way that hemoglobin will give out most of its oxygen even if the partial pressure is 50 degree centigrade. Okay. So this is how it adapts. So as I told you, whenever the process is prolonged, it will help much better. So it helps in adaptation to hypoxia. Okay. So in hypoxic condition, 2,3-ppg levels will become high due to affected metabolism of glucose in the RBCs. Same thing, glucose metabolism will be hampered or modified. Why? Low oxygen, anaerobic metabolism of glucose will be favored. Glycolysis will be favored over TCA cycle and electron transport chain. So more and more glycolysis, more and more 2,3-ppg, more and more unloading of oxygen. Everything is related. So increased 2,3-ppg level in red cell, it decreases oxygen affinity. Okay, I am summarizing, and it facilitates unloading of oxygen to the tissues. And hence increased 2,3-ppg also play a role in adaptation to exercise. What is adaptation to exercise? For the students, I am saying both boys and girls, who are girls not so much. If you are just working out to remain in shape, that is fine, but for those who are training yourself for power lifting, okay, and boys who are trying to build muscle, definitely what your gym trainer will tell you, first do this in a repetition. If you are going to the for the first time, he will tell you, fine, lift this weight 10 times in a set of 3, right? So on the first day you will be easily able to do it, okay? But as soon as you return home, right from day 2 you will have intense pain in the muscle. It will happen due to anaerobic glycolysis, lactic acidosis, etc., right? But over time your exercise tolerance will increase. Now easily on the second week you will be able to do 10 sets, 12 sets, 15, 10, 12, 15 repetitions, and you won't have any muscle pain. Why? Because the same thing has happened. Since you are doing exercise, body now knows that we need to follow this metabolism. So 2-3 ppg will also increase during that time. On the first time there will be anaerobic glycolysis, so there will be generation of lactic acidosis. And the second time, if you continue the exercise at the same rate, there will be increased 2-3 ppg, the body will adapt, and now you can have aerobic exercise even if you are performing at the same rate. However, in order to gain muscle, you need to increase your repetition, okay? Again, ज़्यादा करेंगे तो ज़्यादा lactic acid जमेगा. So this thing, so you increase slowly and your body also adapts by increasing the 2-3 ppg level at the level of muscle, okay? So what are the condition when there will be low 2-3 ppg level, right? These are the condition when body was increasing 2-3 ppg level, number one in hypoxic condition, okay, in exercise. So when there is low 2-3 ppg level, naturally when there is low glucose, so 2-3 ppg is actually product of glycolysis. For that we need a good amount of glucose to start with. Even if you are at high altitude, even if you are exercising, what examiner tells you, you have so much energy drink, okay, those have glucose, and they actually facilitate generation of 2-3 ppg. Whenever you are also going in the trekking, you need glucose solution just because of this. So if there is starvation, if there is low glucose at all altogether, the 2-3 ppg level will be very low, right? And at low 2-3 ppg level, this reduces low unloading of oxygen at tissue level. Means whenever there is prolonged starvation, now cells are almost dying. So who will rejuvenate them? They need more and more oxygen, okay? So see, this line may appear confusing. So low 2-3 bpg level reduces low unloading of oxygen at tissues. It means, follow me very carefully, yes, tissues need oxygen, okay, because they are dying. But what is the main tissue that needs oxygen when they are dying? That is brain, okay. So when there is low 2-3 bpg level, there will be high affinity of oxygen for hemoglobin. You get my point? So there will be high affinity for oxygen at 2 level, and they need to lose the oxygen at the tissue level. We agree to all of that. So how can you explain? The tissues are dying, starvation, brain need more oxygen, but hemoglobin is holding oxygen, it is not giving out oxygen. I am making you understand in Hindi. देखो क्या हो रहा है? In prolonged starvation, okay, 2-3 pg level बहुत कम हो गया because there is no glucose. Since 2-3 pg level is low, the oxygen affinity of hemoglobin is now very high. That is, hemoglobin will not give out oxygen. Okay, it means it reduces low unloading. Basically, though negative hai. Okay, so basically reduces low unloading means it reduces unloading. So hemoglobin will not give out oxygen at the tissue level. If we are only considering the effect of 2-3 bpg, but luckily I told you there are multiple other factors as well that help in unloading of oxygen from hemoglobin. What are the other factors? Mainly high PCO2 and low pH. So whenever there is anaerobic glycolysis, whenever there is prolonged starvation at the tissue level, there will be ketone body production, ketoacidosis. So all of them will again favor delivery of oxygen. Okay, when there is prolonged starvation, this 2-3 bpg level will be the effect of 2-3 bpg on hemoglobin will be gone. So you cannot expect 2-3 bpg to regulate hemoglobin whenever there is prolonged starvation. During prolonged starvation, the protons, the PCO2, they become the major factor that help in unloading and loading of oxygen. Okay, it is therefore that formation of 2,3-BPG is not very essential to life. If 2,3-BPG was the only factor in loading and unloading of oxygen, then what would have happened? When you were starved, the tissues are number one dying of lack of oxygen, glucose, and they also would have died due to lack of oxygen. This does not happen. So 2,3-BPG is an additional factor that favors, but the main factors remain carbon dioxide and proton level as well as the oxygen level. Okay. So why we are saying this? There are few individuals. Okay, there are few individuals in which this gene or enzyme may be non-functional or mutated. Those who are having problem in Rappaport-Lubering shunt. Okay, that is during formation of 2,3-BPG synthesis, the enzymes of RLS, Rappaport-Lubering shunt, they remain bindas. They remain fully healthy till their adult life. Definitely mild polycythemia can happen. Okay, body adjusts in such a way so that the amount of hemoglobin or RBC will increase so that they can cope up with the oxygen carrying function. But apart from that, no other problem happens. So even if there is no 2,3-BPG at all, still loading and unloading of oxygen will not be problematic. Okay. So actually what happens, the increased oxygen affinity of stored blood, that is in blood bank. Okay, in blood bank, when you transfuse a blood, fresh blood from outside, okay, it has got very good affinity for oxygen. What it will do? That will increase that will catch hold of oxygen from the lung very easily. For example, if the blood inside me, due to some reason, okay, maybe due to carbon monoxide poisoning or anything, has got a problem in binding of oxygen from the lungs, that is oxygen affinity is reduced, right? Even in thalassemia, where there is, not thalassemia, whenever there is an abnormal hemoglobinopathy, when adult hemoglobin due to some reason cannot bind with oxygen, okay, then we transfuse blood. Yes, definitely in thalassemia, this is the main thing why we transfused blood, okay, but I don't want to explain thalassemia right now. In thalassemia, what happens? HbF is formed, okay, fetal hemoglobin. There is a disease known as thalassemia that happens due to a genetic problem of both mother and father. So thalassemia screening is a must. Even if arranged marriage or love marriage, whatever you do, anyone, okay, is a screening advice that you should always prescribe. Thalassemia screening is a must. So if both father and mother are having minor thalassemia, the baby will be suffering from major thalassemia, and it leads to high amount of fetal hemoglobin, abnormal A2 hemoglobin, and they will have a very bad oxygen affinity. So they need blood transfusion from outside, so that the external hemoglobin from the outside blood will be facilitating the oxygen delivery and oxygen transport to the brain to perform the daily body function. And we all know that the RBC lifespan is 120 days. So a patient of thalassemia needs regular blood transfusion if he is a major thalassemia person. Anyway, so why this happens? How the blood in the blood bank has got high oxygen affinity? It is because of reduced 2,3-BPG level. The glucose concentration in the blood is low. Okay. Not only that, I told you during blood storage, okay, during blood storage also, during blood analysis of blood glucose, okay, what happens? We add glycolysis inhibitor, that is enolase. Most of you have answered in Viva also, okay. So we add enolase to prevent glycolysis, okay. We prevent glycolysis because number one, the level of glucose will be intact in blood, okay, and number two, there will be reduced 2,3-BPG also, okay. If we stop, you can say, sir, so what if the glycolysis 2,3-BPG is formed at a much higher level, previous step compared to the enolase step, because enolase enzyme, I mean enolase inhibitor, that is sodium fluoride, is after the 2,3-BPG step. Well, it doesn't occur in that way, since it is a chain reaction. If there is stop at some level, it will give feedback inhibition and the whole glycolytic process will stop after 1 or 2 cycles. Okay? So there is reduced 2,3-BPG level, and this 2,3-BPG level will facilitate binding of oxygen. Additionally, in order to prevent this formation of 2,3-BPG, we add inosine in blood. Okay, so inosine addition in storage blood bank, it increases the 2,3-BPG levels in it. So whenever we need oxygen unloading, okay, this is a contraindication to what we are doing in thalassemia. Okay, so what now we need to unload the blood. For example, in COVID patients, okay, there is no oxygen delivery to the tissues. Now we will add inosine, so it will increase the 2,3-BPG level in blood, and that can lead to more and more unloading of oxygen at the tissue level. So you tell me, what should be the main concern of transfusing blood? It is catching hold of oxygen from the lung or delivering the oxygen to the tissues? It is actually delivering of oxygen to the tissues. Okay. However, there are a few conditions when we need blood, so that the oxygen grabbing from the lung is more, as well as oxygen delivery to the tissue is also more. In the previous example that we discussed in thalassemia, there is also HbF, that is fetal hemoglobin. Fetal hemoglobin has also a very good, oxygen capturing ability, but it will not deliver oxygen to the lung unless partial pressure of oxygen is very, very, very low. Fetal hemoglobin behaves more like myoglobin, right? However, for all practical purposes, we need blood to let go of oxygen at the tissue level whenever partial pressure of oxygen is very low. Especially nowadays in COVID pandemic, we need oxygen delivery at the tissue level, at the brain level. Therefore, whenever we face these kind of diseases where we need blood transfusion to increase oxygen delivery to the tissues, we add inosine to the stored blood bank. It actually increases the 2,3-BPG level in blood, and it favors unloading of oxygen on blood transfusion, right? So when the blood is stored, okay, 2,3-BPG level is low, so whatever oxygen is there, it has already, the oxygen is tightly bound to the hemoglobin when the blood is stored. Otherwise, oxygen would have bubbled out. When we need to transfuse, okay, we make sure that in the blood packet, just before transfusion, when we request blood packet, inosine is added. In course of time, it will increase to 3-BPG level, and it will help in unloading of oxygen during blood transfusion, right? So basically, that was it. Okay, all the factors that are determining oxygen delivery and oxygen unloading and loading at the tissue level. So based on these, okay, we will see how all this affects the oxygen dissociation curve. Now this is much easier. You have already read the oxygen dissociation curve in physiology, so it will be much easier for us to understand. So this is the typical oxygen dissociation curve. Okay, it is a sigmoid shaped curve, right? So basically, ODC describes the relation between partial pressure of oxygen and percentage of saturation of hemoglobin. Very important. What is there in the two x-axis and y-axis? In this axis there is partial pressure of oxygen, and in this axis, y-axis, in the ordinate, there is percentage saturation of hemoglobin. Remember, they are different. Partial pressure of oxygen is the pressure, and this is the saturation, PO2. Okay, definitely PO2 ratio. This is the one that we are measuring by pulse oximeter. Okay. So who is responsible for this tetramer, I mean sigmoid shape? It is the cooperative binding or the positive allosteric effect of hemoglobin, that is oxyhemoglobin. So one hemoglobin binding facilitates binding of other, that is actually leading to this sigmoid shape. Okay, so what is P50 of this oxygen dissociation curve? P50 is that PO2 value at which hemoglobin is 50% saturated with oxygen, right? It is actually, the value is in millimeter of mercury, that is it is a value of partial pressure of oxygen at which hemoglobin is 50% saturated. What is the actual value at which hemoglobin is 50% saturated? It is in reality 27 millimeter of Hg. When I gave you the example of mountaineering, I just told you hypothetically, okay? In reality, hemoglobin loses much of its oxygen even if the condition, I mean the saturation is very, very, very low. Okay, in that example I told you hemoglobin is holding 50% of oxygen when oxygen concentration is, I mean partial pressure is 70 mm. Just forget, that was only for making you understand. So understand, in reality 50% saturation, whenever oxygen is 50, I mean hemoglobin is 50% saturated, okay, the oxygen is already very low, that is 27 mm of mercury, and it is much, much lower at high altitude. So the adaptation occurs in such a way. However, what is the normal physiology? The normal physiology is we need to have 95 to 99 or even 100% saturation of oxygen with hemoglobin. So if it is 50, if your SpO2 is reading 50, then your brain is already gone. Okay, so it is much lower. We never aim for 50% saturation, we always aim for 100%, but this is just for your knowledge, because every curve, every sigmoid curve, we need a P50. So 50% saturation is this one. So it is the constant, this one is the partial pressure of oxygen, okay, at which hemoglobin is 50% saturated. So what is the oxygen concentration? Okay, it is 27 millimeter of mercury per torr. Remember I told you there are many things involved. When we are calculating, हम लोग जब calculate कर रहे हैं P50, we are looking at the hemoglobin, oxyhemoglobin saturation, means hemoglobin which is occupied by 50% of oxygen. At what partial pressure? कौन से partial pressure पे hemoglobin is 50% occupied with oxygen? That is known as P50. Okay? And अभी हम लोग क्या डिस्कस कर रहे हैं? ऑक्सीजन कंसेंट्रेशन कितना रहेगा ताकि P50 अटेन हो जाए, ताकि hemoglobin becomes 50% saturated. So that oxygen concentration, I told you, oxygen concentration is always measured in partial pressure per unit of. So this is 25 millimeter of mercury per torr. Okay, so don't confuse in all this. So oxygen dissociation curve basically depicts the oxygen carrying capacity of hemoglobin at different level of partial pressure of oxygen. Okay, so what are the salient features of oxygen dissociation curve of hemoglobin? अगर ऐसे ही पूछ लिया तो आप लोग भी बहुत सारे बोल दे पाएंगे. So let us see one by one. So what does it say? Basically ये क्या है? This dissociation curve, it depicts the oxygen uptake and release by hemoglobin. So पहले शुरुआत में प्रॉब्लम होता है लेने में, फिर झट से ले लेता है, फिर लेके ही रहता है. So it is fully saturated even if the partial pressure of oxygen has not reached 100. So this is basically the uptake and release. So release is in reverse order. Okay, reverse order. देखो, what do I mean? Release is in reverse order. I need to go back so much. I should have included a slide just here. Oh my God. देखो, when you are going to this side, when you are looking at this side, we are dealing with uptake of oxygen. And हम लोग जो reverse ये side पे जा रहे हैं, so this is release of oxygen. Okay. Oh, I've gone too far, I think. So this oxygen dissociation curve describes the fractional saturation of heme subgroups of hemoglobin at various partial pressures. I told you fractional saturation means suppose 50% has been occupied. Okay, that is known as fractional saturation. So 25%, 50%, 75%, that is fractional saturation of hemoglobin. So what actually happens? Normally the oxygen partial pressure in lungs is 100 millimeter of Hg and hemoglobin is 100% saturated with oxygen. This is at the lungs. This we have discussed multiple times in previous classes. At the tissue level, what happens? I told you 40 millimeter of mercury, right? And over there, oxygen is 75% saturated. Why? It needs 25 millimeter अगर हो गया तो ही 50% में drop करेगा, but it is 40 mm, so it is already 75% saturated. So it is already 75% saturated at 40, right? So and at 50 it is 27. So at the tissue level, if we calculate the difference, so generally, so oxygen that is released and delivered to the tissue is actually 25% of the total oxygen that is carried by the hemoglobin. Okay, so whenever we are in fully oxidized not oxygenated state, it means at the tissue level there is no hypoxia. At the tissue level 70, at lung level 100. So वो 30 difference में only 25% of oxygen ही lost होता है. So hemoglobin as a backup always keeps 75% of the oxygen in store, so that if you rapidly do some exercise or suddenly if you need to run, it can hold up. Otherwise अगर पूरा दे देता था, कुछ भी extra करते तो we would have fainted. That doesn't happen. Okay. So this is what happens when we exercise or whenever the body demand is increased. Okay, देखो in alveoli 100% PO2 and generally the percentage saturated hemoglobin is 97 to 100%. Okay, it is not 90, it is 97 to 100. Resting in muscle, resting means you are not doing any activity, just resting. For example, sleeping. PO2 is 40. This unit is millimeter of mercury. Okay, 40 and percentage of hemoglobin saturation is up to 75%. When we are working, okay, normal work, so it becomes 20. Oxygen is being used up. Okay, so percentage saturation of hemoglobin is 20%. And rigorously exercise, vigorous exercise, बहुत, when you are trying for that last repetition, okay, एकदम और रहा नहीं जा रहा है, that is what happens. That is the last, thing that actually increases your muscle growth. So ये जान लो, whenever you are facing pain, रख दिया, muscle नहीं बढ़ने वाला है. Okay, cycling, whatever you are doing, whenever you cannot, एकदम रहा नहीं जा रहा है, that at that moment, whenever you do one more, that is why we need trainer. Okay, if you are doing exercise on your own, you will simply give up. It is the trainer who motivates. Chalo, one more. Okay, fine, we got it. ऐसे motivation में you give one more push, तभी actually anabolism, exercise, muscle building होता है, ठीक है? So this is the actual relation of fractional saturation of hemoglobin with the partial pressure of oxygen, right? So what actually it is showing? It is showing that with a small drop of oxygen tension, ठीक है? छोटा, even from 40 to 27, a significant amount of offloading of oxyhemoglobin will happen. So whenever we are going towards the left side, it is sigmoid, means it is going just like this. So ये section में, even if a small change in partial pressure of oxygen concentration will lead to a huge change in oxygen delivery to the tissue. This is what the sigmoid curves tells you. Naturally, it is to be noted that on reaching the tissues, oxyhemoglobin, okay, it does not release oxygen completely. पूरा oxygen को एक बार में नहीं छोड़ देता है. It happens in phase by phase depending on the cellular need of oxygen. जितना चाहिए होता है उतना ही छोड़ेगा. अगर that is why we saw whenever you are not exercising, it is releasing 75 up to 25% when you are exercising more. The organs which are exercising more. Suppose I am exercising with my arms, naturally the blood, the oxygen at my oxyhemoglobin at the supplying my feet don't need to release that much of oxygen, right? So it depends as per the cellular need of oxygen. Okay, why ये क्यों होता है? अगर पूरा सब कुछ दे देता तो, so this is our, we have come to the end of our discussion today, we'll be stopping very soon. अगर सब कुछ दे देता, if the oxygen, I mean hemoglobin would have delivered excess oxygen, सेल को चाहिए या नहीं चाहिए, टिश्यू को चाहिए या नहीं चाहिए, जितना ऑक्सीजन हम लेके आए चलो भाई ये पूरा ले लो, ऐसे अगर होता तो देयर वुड बी एक्सेस अमाउंट ऑफ ऑक्सीजन एट द टिश्यूज and they would have led to the production of reactive oxygen species. So ज़्यादा ऑक्सीजन अगर होता है टिश्यूज लेवल पे तो वो वहाँ पे फ्री रेडिकल हो जाता है एंड दैट विल लीड टू ऑक्सीडेशन ऑफ सेलुलर, एक्सेस ऑक्सीजन मीन्स ऑक्सीडेशन ऑफ सेलुलर कंटेंट्स विच इज़ वेरी 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 डेंजरस. सो हम लोग, ये तो डेंजरस है ही, मोर ओवर इवन इफ सेल्स डज नॉट रिलीज एक्सेस ऑक्सीजन, इवन इफ ऑक्सीहीमोग्लोबिन डज नॉट रिलीज एक्सेस ऑक्सीजन, सेल्स ऑलवेज हैव गॉट प्रोटेक्टिव एंटीऑक्सीडेंट. वो प्रो विटामिन ए हो गया, विटामिन ई हो गया, विटामिन सी हो गया, देयर आर मल्टीपल एंटीऑक्सीडेंट that are always present. Even if oxygen delivery is more, prevention of free radicals will be there. Okay, so it prevents. So now the next part of the discussion will be factors that are affecting the oxygen dissociation curve or allosteric modulators of oxygen dissociation curve. That will be a topic of our next class. So feel free to get back to me in the comment section and I will see you with another video. Till then, bye and take care.